Nobody is coming to fix your life. Not your friends, not your boss, not the perfect opportunity you keep waiting for. And deep down, you already know that. 21 days. No one sees you. No one hears from you. But when you come back, they won't recognize you. Right now, someone your age is building discipline, getting stronger, moving forward. And you keep telling yourself you'll start tomorrow. You wake up, reach for your phone, scroll a little, then a little more. You feel that quiet pressure in your chest, the one that reminds you you're capable of more. But instead of acting, you delay it again. And the hardest part, it's not that you don't know what to do. It's that you're not doing it. There was someone I knew. Let's call him Alex. 28 years old, smart, not lazy, just disconnected from himself, working a job he didn't respect, sitting in meetings where his ideas stayed in his head because he didn't feel confident enough to speak. A few weeks earlier, his girlfriend left him. No fight, no drama, just one sentence he couldn't forget. You have no direction. At first, he got defensive, told himself she was wrong. But later that night, sitting alone in his car outside his apartment, everything felt quiet in a way he couldn't ignore. Engine off, lights out, just him and his thoughts. He didn't want to go inside because going inside meant facing the same routine, the same habits, the same version of himself he was starting to resent. So he sat there and looked at his reflection in the rear-view mirror. And for the first time, he asked himself a question he had been avoiding for years. Do I even respect the man I'm becoming? He didn't. That was the moment everything changed. Not in a loud, dramatic way. No social media post, no announcement, no new life starts now energy. Just a quiet decision. Disappear for 21 days. No distractions, no unnecessary conversations, no constant noise filling his head. Just space, discipline, and brutal honesty. But here's what most people don't tell you. By day 7, he wanted to quit. The silence got heavy. The boredom felt unbearable. Every part of him wanted to go back to what was familiar. By day 14, he almost did. No big transformation yet. No visible results. Just slow, uncomfortable progress that nobody else could see. And that's where most people fail. But by day 21, something shifted. Not his circumstances overnight, but his identity. The way he carried himself changed. The way he thought changed. And without saying a word, the way people treated him started to change, too. In the next 60 minutes, you're going to see exactly how that transformation happened. Step by step, day by day, including the moments where everything in you wants to give up. Because this isn't about motivation. It's about becoming someone you can respect. And if you're tired of repeating the same patterns, tired of knowing you could be more but staying the same, this might be the moment you've been waiting for. So start with this. If there's someone in your life right now who's stuck, distracted, or slowly losing control of who they are, share this video with them. It could be the thing that helps them finally change. Chapter 1. Cut the noise before it controls you. Before you rebuild your life, you have to take something away. Not your goals, not your ambition, not even your habits. Yet, your noise. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear. You're not stuck because you lack discipline. You're stuck because your attention is constantly being stolen. Every scroll, every notification, every random piece of content you consume without thinking, it's pulling you further away from the person you're trying to become. And the worst part, you've gotten used to it. Let's be honest for a second. When was the last time you sat in silence without reaching for something to fill it? No phone, no music, no background noise, no distraction, just you. For most people, that feels unbearable. And that's exactly the problem. The morning after his decision, Alex didn't feel different. There was no sudden burst of motivation, no clarity, no energy. Just the same routine trying to pull him back in. His alarm went off. His hand reached for his phone. Automatic, almost unconscious. But this time, something felt different. He paused. Just for a second. That 1 second felt longer than it should have because for the first time he was aware of what he was about to do. Not just checking his phone, escaping, avoiding, delaying the moment he had to face himself. He turned the screen off and put it down. And instantly, the silence hit him. Not peaceful silence, heavy silence, the kind that makes your thoughts louder than you're comfortable with. He sat there longer than usual, staring at nothing, feeling restless in a way he couldn't explain. That's when it started to become clear. Noise wasn't just something around him. It was something he depended on. Later that day, he went to work like normal. Same desk, same people, same routine. At lunch, he sat down across from a few coworkers. Within seconds, phones came out, scrolling, tapping, swiping. No one said anything, not because there was nothing to say, but because everyone was somewhere else, disconnected from the moment they were physically in. Alex just sat there watching, and for the first time it looked strange, not normal, not harmless, addictive. That's when something clicked. This wasn't just about him. It was the environment, a system designed to keep people distracted, comfortable, and passive. And if he stayed inside that system, nothing about him would change. So he made a decision that felt small but wasn't. He started cutting things out. No social media, no random scrolling, no checking his phone first thing in the morning, no checking it right before sleep. Simple rules, clear boundaries. But what he didn't expect was how hard it would feel. By the second day, something started to creep in. A quiet anxiety. What if someone texted him and he missed it? What if something important happened? What if people noticed he wasn't responding? That fear, the fear of missing out, felt real. It pulled at him in small moments. Standing in line, sitting alone, waiting for something. Every empty felt like an invitation to go back. And more than once, he almost did. One moment stood out. He was sitting on his bed late at night, exhausted from the day. No distractions, no stimulation, just fatigue. He picked up his phone, unlocked it. His thumb hovered over the exact app he used to open dozens of times a day. It would have been so easy. Just one tap, a quick scroll, a little escape, no effort required. And in that moment, he realized something that hit deeper than anything before. He wasn't reaching for connection. He was reaching for relief. Relief from thinking. Relief from discomfort. Relief from facing the version of himself he was trying to change. That's when it stopped being casual. It became real. He locked the phone, put it down, and stayed there, sitting in the discomfort without running from it. No distraction, no escape, just awareness. It didn't feel like progress. It felt like resistance. But that's what the first step always is, not growth. Resistance. Every time you don't give in to what's easy, you create space for something stronger to take its place. By the third day, something subtle began to shift. Time felt different, slower, longer, more real. He noticed things he usually ignored. How often his mind jumped from one thought to another. How uncomfortable stillness actually was. How much of his day used to be filled with meaningless input. And with that awareness came something unexpected. Focus. Not forced focus. Natural focus. He could sit with one task longer, think more clearly, be present in moments that used to pass unnoticed. Nothing dramatic had changed. From the outside, his life looked exactly the same. But internally, there was a difference. He wasn't reacting automatically anymore. He was choosing. And that's where control begins. Not when everything in your life changes overnight. But when you stop letting everything else decide how you spend your attention, because here's the truth most people never face. If you can't control your attention, you will never control your life. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they're distracted, pulled in too many directions, chasing too many things, listening to too many voices that aren't even their own. And over time, that noise becomes their identity. If you want to become unrecognizable, you don't start by adding more. You start by removing what's holding you back. The distractions, the noise, the constant need to escape reality instead of improving it. Because once you take control of your attention, you take back control of your life. And most people never get that far. Chapter 2. Day 7. When everything starts to break. Day 7 doesn't feel like progress. It feels like everything is falling apart. This is the part no one talks about. The part where the excitement is gone, but the results haven't arrived yet. You're no longer distracted enough to ignore your life, but not transformed enough to feel proud of it. You're just stuck in between. And that's where most people quit. By the time Alex reached day 7, the silence that once felt unfamiliar had turned into something heavier. It followed him everywhere. Mornings felt longer. Work felt slower. Even simple tasks started to feel more exhausting than before. Not because they were harder, but because there was nothing left to hide behind. No quick scroll to break the tension. No background noise to numb the boredom. No easy escape when his mind started getting loud. And his mind did get loud. Doubts started showing up in ways he didn't expect. What's the point of this? Is this even working? You're doing all this for what? These weren't dramatic thoughts. They were quiet, persistent, rational sounding. And that's what made them dangerous, because they didn't feel like excuses. They felt like truth. Let's be honest for a second. This is the moment where discipline stops feeling inspiring and starts feeling pointless. No one is watching. No one is impressed. Nothing external is changing. It's just you doing things that don't feel rewarding yet. And your brain hates that, because your brain is wired for comfort. It wants quick feedback, immediate results, instant gratification. So when you remove that, it starts fighting back hard. One afternoon, Alex found himself sitting at his desk, staring at his screen, unable to focus. Not because he was distracted, but because he was tired of trying. There was no dopamine, no excitement, no momentum, just effort. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly, and for a moment, he didn't care anymore. That was new. Not frustration, apathy. That quiet voice that says, maybe this just isn't worth it. He picked up his phone without thinking, unlocked it, and this time, he didn't hesitate as long. His thumb moved faster than before, like his body remembered something his mind was trying to forget. For a split second, it felt familiar, comforting, safe. But right before he tapped the screen, something stopped him. Not motivation, not discipline, awareness, a simple realization. If I go back now, I reset everything. Not just the habit, the identity he was trying to build. That thought hit differently, because for the first time, this wasn't about rules anymore. It was about who he was becoming. He locked the phone, put it down harder than he needed to, and just sat there staring at his reflection in the dark screen, frustrated, restless, unsure. That moment didn't feel like strength. It felt like pressure. And that's exactly what it was. Pressure is what reveals what you actually are. Not when things are easy, but when everything in you wants to stop. That night was worse. No distractions meant no escape from his own thoughts. Everything he had been avoiding started resurfacing. Missed opportunities. Wasted time. Versions of himself he could have been but wasn't. It didn't motivate him. It weighed on him. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling something unfamiliar. Restlessness without relief. And for a second he genuinely considered quitting. Not dramatically, not with a big decision. Just slowly, quietly going back to how things were. Reinstalling apps, checking out mentally, telling himself he'd try again later. That's how most people fail. Not all at once, but in small, invisible decisions that lead them right back to the start. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Day 7 is not where you see results. It's where you face withdrawal. Because what you're really cutting off isn't just distraction. It's your escape from reality. And when that disappears, reality gets louder. Your thoughts feel sharper. Your insecurities feel closer. Your discomfort feels heavier. Most people interpret that as a sign to stop. But it's the opposite. It's a sign that something is finally changing. Alex didn't have a breakthrough that night. No sudden clarity. No powerful realization. No moment of confidence. Just a quiet decision. I'm not going back. That was it. No emotion behind it. Just a choice. And sometimes that's enough. The next morning didn't feel better, but it felt different. Not easier, but clearer. He noticed that the urges were still there, but they didn't control him the same way. They came and went like waves. Strong for a moment, then gone. That's when he understood something most people never realize. You don't eliminate the urge. You outlast it. Every time you don't act on it, it loses power. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. But it happens. By the end of day 7, nothing about Alex's life looked impressive. No visible transformation, no dramatic results, no external validation. But internally, something had shifted. He proved to himself that he could feel uncomfortable and not run, that he could face boredom and not escape, that he could sit with his thoughts and not avoid them. That's not exciting, but it's rare because most people never make it past this point. They go back to what's easy, what's familiar, what feels good in the moment, and they stay the same. If you're here right now, mentally, emotionally, or even just imagining it, this is your test. Not of motivation, but of tolerance. How much discomfort can you handle without giving up? Because on the other side of this phase, something changes. Not your life overnight, but your control over it. And once you have that, you're not the same person anymore. Chapter 3. The truth you've been avoiding. By the time you reach this point, something feels different. Not easier, not better, just quieter. The noise is lower. The distractions aren't pulling as hard. The urges are still there, but they don't control you the same way. And in that silence, something uncomfortable starts to rise. Clarity. Not the kind you post about. Not the kind that feels empowering. The kind that forces you to look at your life without filters. This is where most people turn back. Because distraction wasn't the real problem. It was protection. Protection from seeing things as they really are. Let's be honest. It's easy to say you want more out of life. It's easy to imagine a better version of yourself. What's hard is admitting where you actually are right now. No excuses, no comparisons, no stories to make it feel better. Just the truth. A few days after pushing through that breaking point, Alex found himself sitting alone again. This time, not avoiding the silence, but stepping into it on purpose. No phone, no music, no background noise, just a notebook in front of him. He didn't feel ready. That's how you know it matters. He picked up a pen and stared at the page longer than he expected. Because once you start writing the truth down, you can't ignore it anymore. He drew 3 lines across the page, 3 sections: health, work, life, simple categories. But what he was about to put under them wasn't simple at all. He started with health. At first, he tried to soften it. I could be more consistent. I haven't been prioritizing it. But even as he wrote it, it felt like a lie. So he crossed it out and wrote something else. I've been neglecting my body. That felt closer to the truth. Then work. Same pattern. He wanted to write something safe, something that didn't make him feel uncomfortable. But again, it didn't sit right, so he stopped pretending. I've been doing the bare minimum. That one hit harder than expected because it wasn't about ability. It was about effort, then life. This one took longer, not because he didn't know what to write, but because he did. And it was harder to admit. I don't respect how I'm living. He sat there for a while after writing that. Not reacting, not overthinking, just letting it be there. Clear, honest, unfiltered. That's the moment most people avoid. Not because they don't know the truth, but because they don't want to feel it. Here's the uncomfortable reality. You already know where you're falling short. You just keep yourself distracted enough not to think about it. Because once you see it clearly, you have two choices. Change it or accept it. And accepting it means accepting the life that comes with it. That's what makes this step so powerful. Not the writing itself, but the clarity it creates. Alex didn't feel motivated after this. He didn't suddenly feel driven or inspired. He felt exposed, like he had been hiding from himself and just got caught. But underneath that discomfort, there was something else. Direction. For the first time, he wasn't guessing anymore. He wasn't trying random habits or chasing vague goals. He knew exactly where he was lacking. And that changes everything because vague problems create vague effort. Clear problems create focused action, but clarity comes with a cost. Responsibility. You can't blame your environment anymore. You can't blame your past. You can't blame other people because now you see your role in it fully. That's not easy to accept. In fact, most people reject it. They go back to distractions, back to comfort, back to avoiding the truth. Because it's easier to stay the same than to admit you've been the reason you're stuck. Alex didn't go back, but that doesn't mean it felt good. Later that day, he caught himself doing something he had done for years. He started comparing, looking at other people's progress, their results, their lives. And for a moment, the old thoughts came back. You're behind. You should have started earlier. You're not where you're supposed to be. This time he didn't try to fight those thoughts. He just looked at them differently because now he had context. He knew why he was behind. Not bad luck, not lack of talent, lack of consistency. That realization removed something dangerous. Excuses. And without excuses, all that's left is action. That's when the shift happens. Not when you feel ready, but when you stop lying to yourself. The truth doesn't motivate you. It directs you. It tells you exactly what needs to change. Even if you don't feel like changing it. By the end of that day, Alex didn't have a plan to fix everything. He didn't need one. He had something more valuable. Awareness. And awareness changes how you move. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop pretending things are fine when they're not. You stop waiting for the right time to act because now you see what happens if you don't. This is the point where your identity starts to shift. Not because you've achieved something, but because you've stopped avoiding reality. And that's rare. Most people never get here. They stay in cycles. Distract, avoid, repeat. But once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. And that's where real change begins. Not with motivation, not with inspiration, but with the truth. And once you face it, you either rise to meet it or you stay exactly where you are. Chapter 4. Discipline is built when you don't feel like it. Clarity gives you direction, but direction alone doesn't change your life. Because knowing what to do and actually doing it are two completely different things. This is where most people get stuck again. They see the truth. They understand what needs to change. They even feel a short burst of motivation to do something about it. And then nothing happens. Not because they're lazy, but because they're waiting to feel ready. Let's be clear. You will not feel ready. Not on the days that matter. Not when it's early and your body is tired. Not when your mind is foggy and your energy is low. Not when doing the work feels heavier than avoiding it. That's where discipline begins. Not when it's convenient, but when it's uncomfortable. A few days after facing his reality, Alex decided to act. Not in a dramatic way. No big goals, no unrealistic plans, just something simple. He set his alarm earlier than usual. That was it. No perfect morning routine. No complex system. Just one decision. Wake up and don't negotiate. The first morning felt harder than he expected. The alarm went off and immediately his mind started negotiating. Just 5 more minutes. You didn't sleep well. You can start tomorrow. It sounded reasonable. That's what makes it dangerous. Because the voice that keeps you stuck doesn't sound weak. It sounds logical. Alex lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, not moving, just listening. He could feel the pull to stay in bed. Warm, comfortable, easy. And for a moment, it almost made sense to give in. But then something else showed up. A quiet thought. If you don't get up now, nothing changes. No emotion, no motivation, just truth. He sat up slowly, reluctantly, but he moved. That was the first win. It didn't feel powerful. It felt small, almost insignificant. But that's how discipline starts, not with big actions. With small decisions you don't negotiate with. The next day was the same and the day after that. Some mornings felt easier. Most didn't. But he stopped asking himself how he felt and started acting based on what he decided. That's the shift from emotion to identity. You don't wake up early because you feel like it. You wake up early because that's who you're becoming. That's what discipline really is. Not forcing yourself to suffer. Not pushing through with intensity, but becoming someone who follows through regardless of how they feel. And the more you do it, the less resistance you feel. Not because it gets easy, but because it becomes normal. A few days into this, something interesting happened. Alex had a long day at work, mentally drained, low energy, no motivation left. He got home and sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. There was something he had planned to do. Simple task, nothing complicated. But in that moment, it felt heavier than it should have. His mind immediately started looking for a way out. You've done enough today. You can skip this one. It won't make a difference. That same voice again. Calm, rational, convincing. And this time it felt even harder to resist. Because now he had a reason. He was tired. That's when discipline is tested the most. Not when you're fresh, but when you're exhausted. He sat there longer than he wanted to, thinking, debating, justifying, and then he did something different. He stopped thinking and just stood up. No speech, no build-up, just action. That moment changed something because he realized something important. Thinking was the problem. The more he thought about doing something, the harder it became to actually do it. So he made a rule. When it's time to act, don't think, move. That one shift removed a lot of resistance. Not all of it, but enough to keep going. Over the next few days, he kept things simple. Wake up early. Do what needs to be done. Don't negotiate. He didn't try to fix everything at once. He didn't overload himself with habits. He focused on consistency because consistency builds trust, not with other people, with yourself. And that's what he had been missing. Self-trust. The belief that when you say you'll do something, you actually do it. Most people don't have that. They make promises to themselves and break them daily. And over time, that destroys confidence because deep down they know they can't rely on themselves. Alex started rebuilding that one action at a time. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't impressive. No one noticed, but internally something was changing. He started respecting his own word, and that changes how you see yourself because confidence isn't built by thinking positively. It's built by proving to yourself that you follow through. That's what discipline gives you, not just results. Identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That shift is everything because once you believe that about yourself, you move differently. You stop hesitating. You stop overthinking. You stop waiting. You act not because you feel ready, but because you don't need to feel ready anymore. By the end of this phase, nothing about Alex's life looked dramatically different. But internally, there was a foundation being built, solid, quiet, reliable. He didn't need motivation. He didn't need hype. He had something stronger, structure. And structure creates momentum. Because when your actions are consistent, your results eventually catch up. Not instantly, but inevitably. Here's the truth. Most people never accept. Discipline is not something you have. It's something you practice daily. Especially on the days you don't feel like it. Because those are the days that define you. Anyone can act when they're motivated. Very few can act when they're not. And that's the difference. If you can do what needs to be done, even when you don't want to, you're already becoming someone unrecognizable. Not to the world, but to your old self. Chapter 5. Rebuild the body. Reclaim the mind. You can't think your way into a new life with an old body. That's a truth most people ignore. They try to fix their mindset, change their habits, improve their focus, while running on low energy, poor sleep, and a body they've been neglecting for years. And then they wonder why nothing sticks. Because your mind doesn't operate independently. It follows your body. How you feel physically shapes how you think, how you act, and how much you're willing to push yourself. If your body is weak, tired, and inconsistent, your mind will reflect that. Not because you lack potential, but because you lack the physical foundation to support it. After a few days of building discipline, Alex started noticing something. He was doing the right things. Waking up earlier, cutting distractions, facing reality. But there were moments, especially in the afternoon, where his energy crashed hard. His focus disappeared, his patience dropped, even simple decisions started to feel heavier than they should. At first, he thought it was mental, a lack of willpower. But then he looked closer. Late nights, inconsistent meals, no real movement throughout the day. He expected clarity while running on exhaustion. That's when it clicked. He wasn't just rebuilding his habits. He needed to rebuild his body, not for appearance, for function. He didn't start with anything extreme. No intense training plan, no strict diet, no unrealistic expectations, just one decision. Move every day. The first session was nothing impressive. No perfect form, no high performance, just effort. He showed up, went through the motions, and left. But something shifted afterward, not physically, mentally. His thoughts felt clearer. His mood stabilized. That constant restlessness in his mind quieted down. It wasn't dramatic, but it was noticeable. That's what most people miss. They're waiting for a massive transformation. But the real change starts with small, consistent signals to your brain. I take care of myself. The next day, he did it again. And the day after that. Some days he felt stronger, some days he felt off, but he stopped judging each session. He focused on consistency because consistency compounds in ways you don't see immediately. A week into this, something subtle started to happen. His posture changed. He stood a little straighter, walked with a bit more presence. Not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because his body was starting to support his mindset. And that changes how you carry yourself. At work, people didn't say anything directly. But interactions felt different. More eye contact, more attention, more respect in small, unspoken ways. That's the part no one talks about. You don't just feel different when you take care of your body. Other people respond to you differently without knowing why. Because energy is visible, even when it's not obvious. But it wasn't all progress. One evening, after a long and exhausting day, Alex didn't want to move at all. His body felt heavy. His mind was tired. Every part of him wanted to skip it. And this time, the excuse felt justified. You've been consistent. You deserve a break. One day won't matter. That voice again, always reasonable, always convincing. He sat there staring at the floor, knowing exactly what he was about to do. Quit for the day, and maybe it would have been fine. Maybe nothing would have happened. But he also knew something else. It wasn't about the workout. It was about the standard. If he lowered it once, it would be easier to lower it again. That's how patterns break, not in big decisions, in small exceptions. So, he made a different choice. He didn't aim for a full session. Didn't try to push himself to the limit. He just moved. 10 minutes. That was it. No pressure. No expectations, just movement. And something interesting happened. Once he started, the resistance faded. Not completely, but enough to keep going. He ended up doing more than he planned. Not because he forced it, but because starting removed the hardest part. That's when he realized something important. The hardest part is never the work. It's starting when you don't feel like it. From that point on, he changed his approach. He stopped focusing on performance and focused on showing up, because showing up builds identity. Every time you do what you said you would do, you reinforce who you are becoming, and your body becomes proof of that. Stronger, more capable, more stable, not just physically, mentally. Because discipline in the body translates into discipline in the mind. You become more resilient, more patient, more controlled under pressure. Not because you trained your thoughts, but because you trained your response to discomfort. That's what physical effort teaches you. To keep going when it's uncomfortable, to stay consistent when it's inconvenient, to finish what you start, even when you'd rather stop. Those lessons don't stay in the gym. They follow you everywhere, in your work, in your decisions, in the way you handle challenges. By the end of this phase, Alex wasn't transformed physically. Not in a way that stood out, but internally. He felt different, more grounded, more stable, more in control. And that foundation made everything else easier. Because when your body supports you, your mind doesn't have to fight as hard. Here's the truth. Most people overlook. You don't build confidence by thinking differently. You build it by becoming physically and mentally stronger, by proving to yourself through action that you can handle discomfort, that you can stay consistent, that you can follow through. And once you have that, you don't just look different, you move different, you think different, you become different. If you want to become unrecognizable, don't just change your thoughts. Train your body to support the life you're trying to build, because a strong mind needs a strong foundation. And that foundation starts with how you treat your body every single day. Chapter 6. Day 14. The breaking point. Nobody sees. Day 14 is where the illusion ends. Up until now, you've been moving forward, cutting distractions, building discipline, showing up even when it's uncomfortable. From the outside, it might look like progress. But inside, something starts to crack. This is the phase where motivation is completely gone. The early momentum has faded, and the results you expected to feel by now still haven't fully shown up. You're doing everything right, and yet it doesn't feel like it's working. Let's be honest, this is where most people quietly give up. Not because they failed, but because they expected to feel different by now. By day 14, Alex wasn't struggling with distractions anymore. He wasn't tempted to scroll the same way. He wasn't negotiating with himself every morning. On the surface, it looked like he had control. But something else took its place. Doubt. A slower, heavier kind of resistance. The kind that doesn't push you to quit immediately, but makes you question why you started at all. It showed up in small ways at first. A lack of urgency, a drop in intensity, a quiet thought that said, maybe this isn't changing as much as you thought. He tried to ignore it, kept following his routine, kept doing the work, but something felt off. The effort was still there. The results weren't obvious, and that gap started to grow. One evening, after a long day, he sat alone again. Not distracted, not overwhelmed, just tired, not physically, mentally. He looked around his apartment. Same walls, same space, same life. And for a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. That's the dangerous part, because change doesn't always show up when you expect it to. And when you don't see it, your mind starts to create its own story. Maybe you're overdoing it. Maybe this isn't necessary. Maybe you were fine before. That last one hit differently because it almost sounded comforting. Going back didn't feel like failure. It felt like relief. No pressure. No constant effort. No need to keep proving something to yourself. Just ease. That's what makes day 14 so dangerous. It doesn't attack you with chaos. It offers you comfort, a softer version of quitting. And if you're not careful, you take it. Alex felt that pull stronger than before. Because this time it wasn't about distraction. It was about meaning. He wasn't asking, "Can I do this?" He was asking, is this even worth it? That question is heavier because it doesn't challenge your ability. It challenges your purpose. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and sat with that thought longer than he wanted to. No immediate answer, no clarity, just silence. And then something unexpected happened. He remembered something simple, not a quote, not a speech, a moment. Day 1, that version of himself sitting in the car, feeling stuck, directionless, disconnected. That feeling came back for a second. Clear, real, and it answered the question, not with words, with contrast. He wasn't there anymore. Maybe his life didn't look completely different yet. But he wasn't that person. And going back would take him right there again. That realization didn't give him energy. It gave him perspective. This wasn't about feeling good right now. It was about not becoming who he used to be. So he made a decision not to push harder, not to do more, just to not stop. That's the shift at this stage. You stop chasing results and start protecting progress, because progress at this point is fragile. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't feel rewarding. But it's real. And if you abandon it too early, you lose everything you built. The next day didn't feel like a breakthrough. There was no sudden motivation, no surge of confidence, just the same routine and the same resistance. But something was different. He wasn't expecting anything from it anymore. He just did the work quietly without needing it to feel meaningful in the moment. And that changes everything. Because when you detach from immediate results, you become consistent in a way most people never reach. You stop needing proof to keep going. You stop relying on feelings to take action. You just move. That's where real discipline lives. Not in intensity, but in persistence. Day 14 isn't about pushing harder. It's about staying when everything in you feels like leaving. And that's rare because most people are willing to start. Fewer are willing to continue when it gets boring. Even fewer continue when it feels pointless. But that's the phase that separates temporary effort from permanent change. By the end of that week, nothing dramatic had happened in Alex's life. No major wins, no visible transformation, but something deeper had solidified. He trusted himself more, not because things were working perfectly, but because he didn't stop when it got hard. And that builds something stronger than motivation ever could. Self-respect, the kind that doesn't come from success, but from knowing you didn't quit on yourself. Here's the truth most people never realize. The version of you that you're trying to become is built in the moments where it feels like nothing is happening, where there's no reward, no recognition, no visible change. Just effort, quiet, consistent, often unnoticed effort. And if you can stay through that, you don't just improve your life, you transform your identity because you become someone who doesn't stop. And once you become that person, everything else becomes a matter of time. Chapter 7. Move in silence. Let them wonder. By this point, something has changed. Not loudly, not in a way that demands attention, but quietly, undeniably, you don't feel the same. You don't think the same. And without trying to prove anything, you start moving differently. This is where most people make a mistake. They start talking. They share their progress. They explain their new habits. They look for validation, subtle or direct, because a part of them wants to be seen, wants someone to notice, wants confirmation that what they're doing matters. But here's the truth. The moment you start seeking validation, you weaken the transformation, because now it's no longer just about growth. It's about approval. And approval is unpredictable. It depends on people who don't understand your journey, your discipline, or your standards. That's why silence matters. Not because you're hiding, but because you're protecting what you're building. A few days after pushing through that breaking point, Alex noticed something subtle. People started reacting to him differently. Not dramatically, just small shifts. A coworker paused a little longer when he spoke. Someone who usually overlooked him started asking for his input. Even casual conversations felt more intentional. At first, he didn't think much of it. But then it kept happening. Not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because his presence had changed. He was more focused, more direct, less reactive. And people noticed that even if they can't explain it. One afternoon, a colleague looked at him and said, "You've been different lately, in a good way." It wasn't a big moment. No applause, no spotlight, but it confirmed something. The work was showing not in obvious results, but in how he carried himself. That's how real transformation appears. Quietly, without announcements, without explanation. But here's where it gets tricky. The moment people start noticing, your ego wants to step in. It wants to talk about it, to explain what you've been doing, to share your progress because it feels good to be recognized. That's the trap, because once you start talking, you shift your focus from doing the work to being seen doing it. Alex felt that too. There was a moment where he almost explained everything. The routine, the discipline, the changes he had been making. It would have felt good to finally say it out loud, to have someone acknowledge it. But he stopped himself, not because he didn't want to share, but because he understood something important. Talking about it wouldn't make him stronger. Continuing it would, so he kept it simple. He nodded, gave a short response, and moved on. That decision mattered more than it seemed because it reinforced something deeper. This wasn't for other people. It was for him. And when you internalize that, everything changes. You stop needing attention. You stop chasing recognition. You stop explaining yourself. You just keep building. And that creates a different kind of confidence. The kind that doesn't need to be seen to exist. But silence isn't always comfortable. In fact, it can feel isolating. Because as you change, you start noticing things you didn't before. Conversations that feel empty. Habits that no longer make sense. Environments that don't align with who you're becoming. And suddenly you don't fit the same way you used to. That's part of the process. Growth creates distance. Not always from people, but from patterns, from behaviors that used to feel normal. One evening, Alex was invited out by a group of friends. Same place, same routine. A few weeks ago, he wouldn't have thought twice, but now something felt off. Not wrong, just disconnected. He went anyway, sat there, listened, observed. The conversations were the same. Complaints, distractions, surface-level talk, no direction, no intention. And for the first time, he didn't feel part of it, not better than it, just separate from it. That realization was quiet, but powerful because it showed him how much he had changed. Not in what he said, but in what he valued. He didn't need to announce it, didn't need to correct anyone, didn't need to prove anything. He just didn't engage the same way. That's what moving in silence looks like. You don't fight the old version of your life. You outgrow it gradually, naturally, without making it a performance. Over the next few days, Alex leaned into that. Less talking, more observing, more focus on his own path. And something unexpected happened. His mind became clearer because he wasn't constantly explaining himself. He wasn't defending his choices. He wasn't seeking approval. He was just acting. And that simplicity created strength because energy that used to go into talking now went into building. That's the advantage of silence. It protects your momentum. It keeps your focus sharp and it prevents outside opinions from interfering with your direction. Here's the truth most people overlook. Not everyone needs to understand your process and most won't because they're not living it. So if you wait for validation before you commit fully, you'll never go Allen. You'll always hold back, always second guess, always adjust based on how others respond. And that slows everything down. If you want to become unrecognizable, you have to get comfortable with one thing. Being misunderstood, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something uncommon. Most people talk about change. Very few actually go through it. And when they see someone who does, it challenges them. So they question it, doubt it, sometimes even resist it. That's normal, and it's not your job to convince them. It's your job to continue. Because results speak louder than explanations ever will. By the end of this phase, Alex wasn't trying to be different. He just was. Not louder, not more expressive, just more grounded, more focused, more in control. And people could feel it without him saying a word. That's the power of silent transformation. You don't announce it, you become it. And when you do, you don't need attention because your presence already says enough. Chapter 8. Day 21. The version they don't recognize. Day 21 doesn't arrive with a dramatic moment. No music, no sudden breakthrough, no version of you standing in front of the mirror completely transformed overnight. That's not how this works. What actually happens is quieter, more subtle, but far more powerful. Because by the time you reach this point, the biggest change isn't what you see on the outside. It's who you've become on the inside, and that changes everything. On the morning of day 21, Alex woke up the same way he had for the past few weeks. No hesitation, no internal negotiation, no second guessing. He got up, not because he felt motivated, but because that's what he does now. That's the difference. At the beginning, every action required effort. Now it required identity. He didn't need to convince himself anymore. He had already decided who he was and his actions followed that automatically. That's when you know the shift has happened. Not when things feel easier, but when they feel normal. Later that day, something small but important happened. He walked into work just like any other day. Same building, same environment. But the way people responded to him felt different. Not exaggerated, not obvious, just noticeable. A greeting that felt more intentional. A conversation that held a little more weight. A moment where someone actually stopped and listened when he spoke. It wasn't about them. It was about him. Because the way you carry yourself changes how people see you and more importantly how they treat you. He didn't overthink it, didn't question it, didn't try to analyze why. He just noticed it and kept moving. That's another shift. You stopped chasing validation and start observing it without needing it. Later that evening, he found himself in front of a mirror again. Not the same moment as before. Not the same mindset. He looked at himself for a few seconds and this time something was different. It wasn't pride. It wasn't excitement. It was respect. Quiet, internal, unshakable. He didn't see a completely new person. He saw someone who followed through. Someone who didn't run when things got uncomfortable. Someone who stayed when it would have been easier to quit. And that changes how you see yourself. Because self-respect isn't built from results. It's built from consistency. From the moments no one sees. From the decisions that don't get recognition. From the discipline that doesn't get praised. That's what he was looking at. Not a perfect version of himself. A reliable one. And that's more powerful because reliability compounds. It builds trust. It builds confidence. It builds identity. Over the next few days, the changes became more noticeable. Not dramatic, but consistent. He spoke with more clarity. He moved with more intention. He wasted less time, and people picked up on it. Not all at once, but enough. Someone asked him how he'd been so focused lately. Another commented on how put together he seemed. A small observation here, a subtle reaction there. Nothing overwhelming, but it added up. For the first time, he realized something. He didn't need to explain anything. The results were speaking. That's the point most people want to skip to, but they never reach it because they don't stay consistent long enough. They start, they stop, they restart, and they never build enough momentum to become different. Alex did something simple. He didn't stop. That's it. No secret method. No hidden advantage, just consistency over time. And that created a gap between who he used to be and who he is now. That gap is what people notice. That's what makes you unrecognizable. Not because you became someone else, but because you removed everything that was holding you back. The distractions, the excuses, the inconsistency, and what's left is who you were supposed to be all along. But here's the part most people misunderstand. Day 21 is not the end. It's the beginning. Because now you've proven something to yourself, that you can change, that you can stay consistent, that you can become someone different. And once you know that you can't go back to who you were before, not comfortably. Even if you try, it won't feel the same, because awareness changes everything. You've seen what you're capable of, and that raises your standard. From this point forward, the goal isn't to celebrate. It's to continue. Because 21 days builds momentum, but 90 days builds identity. That's where the real transformation locks in. That's where it becomes permanent. So the question isn't, did you change in 21 days? The real question is, who are you going to be after this? Because now it's your choice. You can go back to what's easy, back to distraction, back to comfort, or you can keep going, keep building, keep becoming someone you recognize and respect every single day. That's the difference. And that's the moment everything becomes real. You didn't find a new version of yourself. You built it, and now it's yours to keep. You just watched a complete transformation unfold. Not a fantasy, not an overnight success story, but a real structured process. One that took 21 days of discipline, discomfort, and consistency. From disappearing from noise to facing the truth, to building discipline, to rebuilding the body and mind, to pushing through the hardest days when nothing felt like it was working. And finally becoming someone unrecognizable, not to the world, but to your old self. That's what this journey was about. Not changing your life instantly, but changing who you are step by step. Because once your identity shifts, everything else follows. And if there's one thing you should take away from this video, it's this. Transformation doesn't start when you feel ready. It starts when you decide to stop going back. Most people never get past day 3. Some make it to day 7. Very few push through day 14. And almost no one reaches day 21 with consistency. Not because it's impossible, but because it's uncomfortable, it's quiet. It's repetitive. It doesn't give you instant results or validation. But that's exactly why it works. Because in that silence, in that discomfort, you build something most people never have. Control. Control over your attention. Control over your actions. Control over who you're becoming. And the truth is, you don't need anything else to start. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need more motivation. You don't need to wait for the right time. You already know what to do. The only question is, will you do it? So, here's what I want you to do next. Don't wait for tomorrow. Start your own 21-day reset today. Cut the noise. Face your reality. Build one habit you don't negotiate with. Do one hard thing every single day. Keep it simple, but stay consistent. Because the version of you that you're trying to become is built through repetition, not intention. And if you commit to this fully, seriously, without excuses, you will not be the same person 21 days from now. Not because everything around you changes, but because you do, and that changes everything. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on where you are right now. Be honest with yourself. What do you need to cut out? What have you been avoiding? What version of yourself are you ready to leave behind? Write it down. Make it real and start, because no one is coming to do it for you. But you don't need anyone to. You just need a decision. Thank you for staying until the end of this video. And if you're serious about becoming someone unrecognizable, make sure you stay connected, because the next video will take this even deeper. I'll see you there.